Okay, so we are continuing on with section 2.3, so talking about the challenges within a given area based on population and health. So this time we're talking about population structure. So looking at, again, the data we've already kind of talked about, but looking at it more specifically within what we call population pyramids. So the essential question is going to describe the information found in a population pyramid and analyze the data to compare it with stages of the demographic transition model and help kind of explain or think about reasons for why a country or an area it has a certain population pyramid. So we're going to do stuff with this more in class in terms of how to build one, and then also working through kind of problems within that. So we'll talk about this stuff a little more in class, but we want to give the overview here. So key fact is that not only birth rates and mortality rates differ not only from country to country, but also within a country but also inside a country, but also within a country in different age groups can vary greatly based on, if a country is going through different transitions or different cultural things or just other number of factors going in as a result of, cultural things or where they're at in a society. So, that to consider is like, birth rates here in Minnesota might vary greatly from birth rates, in Florida, but also different parts of Minnesota like Inver Grove Heights compared to St. Cloud, Moorhead, what have you. So things to consider. All right. So here is a population pyramid. This is, again, I really, really enjoyed this stuff. So population pyramid shows a country's total population separated by age groups and gender. So typically on the left side, the men are on the right, or sorry, let me rephrase that. The men are on the left side. Women and females are on the right side. Okay. And the joke is, why are they always there? Women are always right. All right. But yeah, typically in any population pyramid, males would be listed here, females over here. In terms of things, in terms of gender identity, they don't really go with that in terms of population pyramids. It's just based on, sex at birth. So in terms of people that are transitioning or have transitioned, I don't think that really has ever really been brought up in these conditions. It's something to think about now in 2020. But I believe it's just kind of based on demographics at birth listed in the census and things like that. So it just kind of counts within two genders or, the two sexes. It doesn't really count for other genders in there. So just something to think about. But anyway, you'll always see kind of an age bracket, 0 to 4, 5 to 9. It usually goes up in 5-year brackets. You might see some that go 10 years, but typically this is kind of what you'll see. And at the bottom, you'll always see percentages. So this is the percentage of the population that is, female, that is within a given age group, percentage that is male. And that might change depending on what population pyramid you're looking at, because sometimes it will say percentage, sometimes it will just give you the actual number. In that sometimes it could be in the thousands or it could be in the millions. So we'll look at some examples as we go forward, but they all kind of have this basic structure within the age group, either percentage or specific numbers. And then also we're looking at male versus female. So within this, we're still in the context of looking at, just these other differences, places that face certain health challenges. And so this continues within that. And population pyramids can help us understand those by looking at this thing, what we call dependency ratios. So the dependency ratio is the comparison of the number of people that are considered too old or too young to work with those who can. So typically, people that are considered too young are between the ages of, newborns to 14. And people that are too old are 65 and older. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't work and you can't support a family just because you're below the age of 14 or you're older than 65. In many cases, you can, but typically you can't. You're not as physically and mentally able to make enough money to provide for your family. All right, or to materially provide for your family if, that's how you do it. All right, so it's more about a range. Same thing with the total fertility rate. Okay, we say that for that, women, it's between the ages of like 14 to 49. No, not a whole lot of women are giving birth at the age of 49, but that doesn't mean that there aren't women that give birth after that or that there aren't women that give birth, before then too. Or when I say before that, I mean, before the age of 50. All right. It's just kind of a range. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind. It's just that not a whole lot of societies that have to or should be depending on people that are this young or this old to provide for the whole of a family or the whole of society, or be the main ones. So the higher a dependency ratio means that there are more people considered unable to work than on average. So a high dependency ratio means you got people that are too young or too old who are either unable to work, or it's more of a burden on them than it should be to support their family and society. Okay, so it's also more of a burden on those in their productive years between 15 and 64 to support those who can't. So an example, here we have a dependency ratio of 38, which means 30% of the population is between 0 to 14 and 65 or older. That's actually probably pretty healthy. All right, because that means that, 2/3 of your population is still, kind of in that middle range that can, provide for these 14-year-olds and under and 65-year-olds and older. Okay, dependency ratio of 67 would mean that 67% of the population is considered unproductive because they're either in that too young or too old age range, which means that the people in that middle ground, that middle 1/3 between 15 and 64, have to produce a bunch, and they have to provide for really 2/3 of the population who can't financially support and work and make enough money to, support themselves or other people. All right, another breakdown within that dependency ratio, to be more specific, is the elderly support ratio. And that is just looking at the number of people considered 65 or older. So you take out the too young, and it's just looking at how many people are above 65 and older. And that means that more working age people within a elderly support ratio, the higher that number, means that there is a smaller number of elderly people. So in this case, you want a higher elderly support ratio, all right? So the smaller the ratio means the fewer people there are to actually support the elderly and their services, things like healthcare, elderly facilities, pensions, Social Security money, all right, people that are paying into taxes that go to support the elderly. All right, so you want actually a higher elderly support ratio because it means there's more people there's more people considered in that working age compared to people that are 65 or older. So again, like if we're using our dependency ratio, if we have a 38% elderly support ratio, that means that 38% of the population has to support 62% of the elders, okay, the 65 or older, which means you got a lot of really, really old people and not a whole lot of young people, okay? Compared to, an elderly support ratio of 67, that means that 2/3 of the population can support that elder group, okay? So it's another just kind of breakdown within there. Then, of course, we have our sex ratio. We mentioned that in the last video. Okay, number of males per every 100 females can show cultural attributes of a region, such as what types of jobs might be done in these areas, education going on, preference for one gender, things related to war. All right, so we're going to look at those kind of examples. So dependency ratio. So remember, the higher ratios are in the dark, and those are, again, not necessarily something you want to see, because remember, we're looking at this. Okay, the higher the ratio means more people are considered unable to work. All right. So again, you want to find, something in this kind of lower ground or more of the middle ground. Okay. So again, you compare the health issues with, maternal mortality, infant mortality rates, health services. Your countries that have higher dependency ratios are again falling into sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. Compare that with, Europe, even China, South and Southeast Asia, or not South Asia, that's over here, but, East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, many parts of North and South America, not all, because again, obviously many parts of Central America have those lower dependency ratios, while Central America has higher dependency ratios. So again, another kind of example within that. All right. Then we have our gender dominance. So again, looking more at sex ratio. This time it breaks it down more based on if there's a male surplus in the green, female surplus in the red. Okay, dark red means there's way more females. Dark green means there's way more males. So again, something to keep in mind, and these are things we're going to talk more about in class. Again, India and the issue of infanticide, and then the China one-child policy. Okay, so our population pyramids. So you can feel free to pause this video, which ones have the highest dependency ratio, highest sex ratios, highest elderly ratio, lowest elderly ratio, and then think about going back to that demographic transition from section 2. Where are they at within, between the United States, Kenya, and Italy? Within, it even says, zero slow growth. So hopefully you know which one is stage 4. And then hopefully you know which ones are stage 2 and stage 3. Okay, but consider these things. So we're going to, feel free to pause that and take a guess at them. So, all right. So going more in depth within Italy's population pyramid, and again, we'll talk more about this in class. 5 things to look at. One, there is a decline in the birth rate, hence why you don't see a whole lot of kids like every 5 years, getting fewer and fewer kids that are being born. Okay, there is a baby boom at number 2. Okay, so go back 2000, you go back 30, 40 years, and that's the baby boom generation across the globe, that 2.2% globally, and coming in right around that time period right here in this area. Okay, if you look at number 3, at that very high end, fewer men due to World War I and World War II. So the more elderly population, you saw a lot of people dying as a result of World War I and World War II. Italy serving in both. And then there was also a lot of issues with the war in Italy once the Allies and the Axis were fighting in 1943, 44, and 45 that led to very high deaths within Italy itself. So then we look at number 4, there are more women due to A, that longer life expectancy, and then B, you have those 2 world wars here at the top. All right, hence why there is a staggeringly higher number of females. So we also have higher numbers of 75 and 79-year-olds than there are 0 to 4. They could be that signs of a future worker shortage and overall declining population, hence that 0 growth, if not negative growth, within Italy. So those are things to consider whenever you see a population pyramid. Is wonder why this is what it is, why this is what it is, but also think about where are we at the demographic transition, but also what factors do I know within a given country or region of the world for why these things might be occurring. Okay, so here we have the United States of America, and again, it's fairly balanced. Again, more women to men at the top, again, related to warfare and in some aspects. But again, still fairly even. Okay, then we get the state of Alaska. Okay, you can obviously see higher numbers in these middle section, or kind of in these 2 sections, not much here. We're seeing a slow decline here, and then not a whole lot of people at the top. But if you go to the Aleutians East Borough, Alaska, we see a staggeringly high number of men at all categories, almost all categories, especially in the Middle Ages, for males to females. Staggeringly high numbers. So if you don't know much about what goes on at Aleutians East Borough, Alaska, here it is. Okay, fishing. Particularly if you know the show The Deadliest Catch, this is what goes on there. So primarily a male-dominated industry and activity that goes on in this part of Alaska. Okay. Then we also got Lawrence City in Douglas County, Kansas. Okay, really high number of people in their early 20s. What could account for that? Something to keep in mind. All right, so we kind of see here the United States and their population pyramid. So here we are in 1950, boom, baby boomers, like this is right when my parents were being born. Then you move it up 50 years, okay, here the baby boomers, and then the subsequent generations like right after that. Okay, those 5 or 10 year pockets, and we're slowly seeing a decline here. Here's 2014. Again, you're not seeing necessarily a massive slowdown. You're seeing more of a kind of an average where we're slowly growing. So we're kind of in that stage 3, stage 4, where there is a very slow growth within the United States. So keep those things in mind when we look at these things. So when we go back to this, okay, for Kenya, okay, they're in stage 2. All right, they're stage 2 of the demographic transition. You got a lot of births, not a lot of people making it very high here, very low life expectancy within that sub-Saharan African area. So you got a high dependency ratio for a lot of young kids. Okay, sex ratio is fairly balanced, but the elderly ratio, not a lot of people needed to take care of the elderly because, again, people just don't seemingly live that long in Kenya based on this data. Okay, we talked about the United States here. But also we talked about Italy being that stage 4. And so we're kind of seeing kind of the reverse within the dependency ratio in Italy. Looks like it's going to eventually, if these things progress, this group is going to be dependent later on. Sex ratio, fairly balanced except here at the top end, but that's true in most countries. So yeah, these are going to be things we're going to look at more in depth in class. We're going to look at more population periods. We'll play a little game. We'll do some data configuration with it. So that's why you got to bring your Chromebooks to class. We're going to have a lot of fun with these. So, all right, well, here's where we're going to stop, and then we'll almost done with the chapter.